Hi, welcome to Anaprime Recap. You live in a ghost town full of monsters that no superhero can defeat. To save the residents, you will have to lift your bald head from your pillow and face them. In today's video, we will continue to follow the epic battles of One Punch Man, episodes 4, 5, and 6. The Togan gang, made up of a group of bald men led by Hammerhead, take to the streets in a fight for freedom. His goal is to establish a new law in F City, where people who do not want to work should be supported by the rich. In this way, no one would be a slave to labor anymore. The big problem is that people don't pay attention to the demonstration, so the gang decides to destroy the penthouse of Dinero, a guy with a lot of money, as a way of showing that they are not messing around. Hammerhead orders one of his allies to take down the entire building. He finds it inexcusable that a single man owns an entire building while hundreds of people were homeless. However, after the destruction, another henchman checks the map and realizes that this was the wrong building. The right place was some kilometers away. Then the Association of Anonymous Vagabonds unites and walks towards Dinero's real home. Upon waking up, Saitama turns on the news and sees a report that talks about the atrocities committed by the terrorist group that was destroying the city. The gang says it will continue this revolt until food, clothing, and shelter are provided free of charge to those who do not work. Finally, the journalist warns the population and asks everyone to be careful when encountering a bald man wandering the streets. Saitama had intended not to get involved with these guys, but now his reputation was at stake. He spent 3 years trying to be recognized as a superhero, but if those demented baldies kept up their mischief, he too would be treated as a villain. Saitama then puts on his uniform and takes to the streets after the terrorists. Meanwhile, Dinero's butler advises the man to run away. However, the tycoon has another card up his sleeve. His personal bodyguard, Sonic, guarantees that he will eliminate them all. The gang decides to cut their way through the forest and, from afar, they can already spot the rich man's building. But the ninja appears on their path and issues a warning. Sonic claims that none of his opponents escaped alive. However, if those men would give up their plan and surrender immediately, he would let them live. But Hammerhead is not intimidated and orders his men to eliminate that guy. The ninja attacks them back and cuts their heads off at lightning speed. None of them has the slightest chance to escape. The only one still standing is the leader of the gang. The man hits the ground and destroys much of the forest. He then starts throwing giant rocks at Sonic, but Sonic manages to dodge all the attacks. The ninja decides to face him head-on to find out what that guy is capable of. Hammerhead rips off the trunk of a tree and uses it to strike him. However, the boy is extremely fast and throws a knife at the back of his head. Sonic calls Dinero and informs him that all the members of that gang were already dead. But to his surprise, when he looks at the ground again, he realizes that Hammerhead's body was no longer there. Even after being struck on the back of the head, the man is still alive. This was made possible by the simple fact that his skull is twice as thick as a normal person's skull. While fleeing through the forest, he is surprised by Saitama. The amateur superhero reveals that he is there to crush the Togan gang members, and Hammerhead responds with a powerful punch. However, even after the blow, Saitama is still standing. He mocks his opponent's attack and says he was disappointed because he was excited to see the power of that suit. Then the criminal gets angry and says that he was really looking for someone to test the full potential of his armor. He launches his most powerful blow, the spinning arm attack, and Saitama continues to make fun of his face. This time, he says, that blow was similar to what he used to do as a child. The protagonist grabs the villain's arms and, with a single elbow, destroys his special suit. He then orders the man to stop terrorizing the city. Hammerhead is surprised that he is still alive. He escapes before Saitama changes his mind and decides to eliminate him. Soon after, Sonic appears and asks the boy where that criminal went. The ninja believes the bald hero to be another member of the Togan gang and launches his first attack. However, Saitama manages to hold the knife. He then destroys the blade of the sword that Sonic was about to use to strike him. The protagonist tries to explain that he is not one of the terrorists, but it doesn't matter anymore. He had been the first to escape 2 straight blows from that ninja, so Sonic was determined to defeat him. He uses his super speed to try to confuse Saitama. After a few seconds, the boy finds a gap to attack him, but the billiard ball head manages to dodge it and almost lands a blow in his low countries. Realizing that he was no match for this guy, Sonic decides to leave with the promise that now that he has found a worthy opponent, he will train even harder to beat him. Later that day, Saitama receives Genos, his apprentice, at his home. He tells him about the ninja he faced in the afternoon and says that he is going through a serious problem. The cyborg asks what is going on, and Saitama reveals that no one knows who he is, let alone recognizes him as a superhero. He says that in these past 3 years he had defeated more villains and evil organizations than any other superhero he knew. But still, people have never even heard of him. So Genos suggests that Saitama join the Heroes Association and become a professional superhero. However, to get his registration, he would need to pass some tests. The bald man asks the cyborg to join the association along with him. In exchange, he would make Genos his official apprentice. Since this was the boy's main goal, he ends up accepting the deal. A few weeks later, the duo heads to the place where the hero certification exams would be held. In total, there were more than 11,000 candidates, and the trend was for the evaluations to become even more rigorous. Saitama was the skinniest guy in his team, and as a result he became a laughingstock to his competitors. But only for a short time. The first test consisted of practicing side-to-side jumps for 30 seconds. The speed at which the bald man performed the jumps was so high that his footprints were stuck in the ground. Next, the would-be superheroes had to run a 1,500-meter race, which our protagonist finished in a few seconds. Not to mention the load test. With a single arm, Saitama was able to lift almost a ton. In the Groundhog game, he didn't miss a single blow. Finally, in the test of strength, Saitama broke the punching machine in one go. At the end of the tests, all the participants were in the locker room anxiously awaiting their results. Genos and his sensei meet and the boy says that the exams were very easy, both the physical and the written ones. An hour later, the results are released. Genos gets top marks in all tests and is now certified as an S-class hero, the highest among all hero classes. Saitama, on the other hand, scored 71 on the sum of the tests, and was categorized as a Class C superhero. In the physical exams he broke all the records of the Heroes Association, but in writing he was a real disaster. For this reason, Saitama was sent to the last class. But this was not a problem. The important thing was that now both he and Genos would be recognized as real superheroes, and the cyborg had just become their official apprentice. The next day, they meet so that Genos can begin his training. The boy asks his master to do his best in that battle so that he can test his limits. The cyborg uses its propulsive jets to fly like a tornado in Saitama's direction, but Saitama manages to dodge and evades all subsequent attacks. Genos uses his ability to incinerate and ends up destroying a large part of that forest, which they were using as a training arena. The young man gave it his all, and his robotic body was already collapsing. Still, he does not give up the fight and continues to try to land a blow on the bald sensei, but to no avail. Even without fighting back, Saitama managed to dodge all the attacks. Then the cyborg asks his master to stop taking it easy on him and start taking the fight seriously. At that instant, the egghead's countenance changes and he prepares to punch the boy. But before his fist could touch Genos, Saitama stops his blow and says it's time for lunch. Looking back, the cyborg realizes that only the speed of his master's punch was able to rip the mountain in half. After eating an entire bucket of udon, they end the day by saying goodbye and each walk back to their home. 5 days have passed since Saitama got his professional superhero license, and so far no major incident has happened. Every day Genos appeared in his apartment and Saitama had to find some way to get rid of him. The cyborg warns his master that Class C heroes who have no proven activity 1 week after their licenses were issued will have their names removed from the heroes registry. Saitama rebuts by saying that there was no crime being reported on TV, so he would have no way to act. Genos says that only upper-class superheroes deal with larger-scale villains, which are those reported on TV. Class C heroes are usually responsible for taking care of minor crimes, such as burglaries and robberies. So Saitama would have to go out on the streets in search of someone who needs help, if he wanted to keep his license. This was also an excellent excuse to get rid of Genos, who was already becoming a burden in his life. Our protagonist runs around the city looking for bandits, but to his chagrin, the place was in absolute peace. So, he decides to return home. The next day, Saitama returned to the streets. That was his last chance to be recognized for some heroic act, otherwise he would go back to being just an amateur superhero. The little bald guy was already freaking out when suddenly Sonic appeared. The ninja had returned in order to get his revenge. However, Saitama says that he is too busy at that moment and asks him to come back another day. Unhappy at being ignored like that, Sonic draws his sword and goes after his opponent, who breaks the blade like a toothpick. Seeing that his opponent was unwilling to face him, the demented ninja begins to distribute his attacks throughout the city to force the superhero to fight him. A lot of debris is thrown and the population has to hide. In the midst of this chaos, Saitama saves a boy who was about to be hit by a car. By this time, he is overcome with rage. The protagonist comes up behind Sonic and with a single blow is able to defeat him. Luckily for him, that battle resulted in the arrest of the ninja and counted several points on his hero's wallet. In the command tower, the team responsible for surveilling the surrounding cities sends a pair of Class A superheroes to do an investigation in Z City. Apparently, a sinister creature was wandering in an uninhabited area of the city. When they encounter the monster, the heroes quickly prepare to attack. Golden Ball launches its first attack, but the creature uses its disgusting seaweed hair to deflect the missile. He then pulls the man by the leg and throws his body against the buildings. His partner, Spring Mustache, draws his fencing sword and manages to block all attacks. Soon after, he launches his most powerful blow, which allows his sword to reach long distances. But the hairy monster deflects. At that moment, Spring Mustache realizes that he will not be able to win that battle and calls for reinforcements from the association. A few minutes later, the hero is defeated. The creature uses its tentacles to break the sword, and the mustachioed man is no longer able to continue the fight. As the monster was preparing to leave the city, he spots Saitama walking with a shopping bag. The creature is in doubt whether this was a superhero or an ordinary man, but decides to attack him anyway. This time, however, he was wrong. Saitama destroys that fern easily and even cooks it for dinner. Later, when reinforcement arrives on the scene, the creature had already disappeared and everyone believed that it was still prowling around there. From that day on, Z City was known as Terrifying City, which served as a haven for the most dangerous monsters humanity had ever seen. Will Saitama be able to eliminate all these monsters, or is this a chance for him to finally find a villain up to his standards? So, what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you next time.